Hi everyone, my name is Abhi Sharma and I'm the Director of Product Management at Avaamo. Now in this video we're going to be focusing on the Avaamo platform and in particular taking a look at our runtime engines. Avaamo comes with 3 runtime engines that enable us to drive our vision of automating every conversation in the enterprise. A dialogue engine, a cognitive search engine, and a voice engine. Now, in this video, we're going to be focusing on the second one, which is the cognitive search engine, and we're going to look at how it enables various features of natural language understanding, like extractive or abstractive summarization, multilingual support, transfer learning, and so on. Now, while I'm going to be focusing in this video on this particular engine, it's very important to keep in the back of our minds that all of these engines, the dialogue, the voice, and the cognitive search, really work in parallel or in concert to help Avaamo's virtual assistants understand and fulfill user goals. Now, speaking of goals, the goal of the cognitive search engine is threefold. Number one, to provide a incredible understanding of very technical documentation, right? So very specific, vertical specific knowledge or domain specific understanding. The second goal of the engine is to provide a high steady state accuracy, meaning over time we want to have a threshold of accuracy, typically in the mid-90s, that allows to have consistency in how the assistant will respond in a cognitive search capacity. And finally, we want to be able to provide all of this across many different languages to people from all over the world. And so those 3 goals, and inherently those 3 problems, are what the cognitive search engine solves by using some of the technologies that you're seeing on the right here. Things like zero-shot learning, being able to learn across multiple different domains by having a base model that understands a general understanding of the world that we can fine-tune very quickly to learn about different specific domains or verticals. Providing multilingual support across different languages. Providing tooling to help the assistant learn over time, things like our unhandled query analyzer or our diagnostic tool. And then, of course, things that support natural language understanding, like answer summarization, whether it's extractive, where we're providing the exact section or the right part of an article to user queries, or abstractive, where we might actually summarize the response and provide a sentence where the original article might have been many, many different paragraphs. So condensing that information down. And then finally, looking at things like tabular inferencing or extraction, where if content is in a tabular form, being able to find the answer even in that context and finding the right cell to do some analytics on top of that content. So all of these things enable us to provide a very incredible user experience when it comes to cognitive search. Now, specifically in today's video, we're going to be looking at things like precision in the answer, right? Being able to highlight the specific response to a user query. Being able to understand variations, right? Natural language support. People don't always say the same thing when they're talking to a virtual assistant. They might ask the same question in different ways, and we have to be robust in answering those questions. Disambiguation, this notion that a question that a user might have might lead down very different paths. Maybe there's multiple articles that answer the same question, guiding the user down the right pathway automatically to be able to provide an answer. Handling phrases, right? Short, single word, multi-word phrases that users might type into the virtual assistant, as well as long, drawn-out sentences where the system has to be able to pull out the signal from the noise and figure out exactly what the user is asking for and find the right answer in the right section of the right article and pull that up for users. Let's take a look at some real-world examples to get a feel for how all these things come together. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is a set of articles that are related to FDA approval, right? Very technical documents. We're going to pretend that we're trying to submit some documentation to potentially get a drug approved, right? And so we're asking these technical documents questions about how we go about the submission process. So I'm going to open up the virtual assistant. This is sort of a web deployment, a web channel deployment, and we'll start asking questions. Now, Ada is the assistant. It's introduced itself to me. It's given me a couple of things that I can ask. Now, a good thing to keep in mind is This assistant is essentially been pointed to a set of very technical documents, and now we're going to start asking questions, and the answers are going to come back from those documents. This is an example of how the cognitive search engine works really out of the box, right? All we've done is really pointed the assistant to these documents. So let's see an example of precision in answers where we might actually get a highlighted response to the exact question we're asking. So for example, I could come in and say something like, what font size should I use for my submissions? Right? Pretty straightforward question. And here is where the beauty of precision here comes to play. Right? We can actually see that the assistant has found the right answer. It's found the right article, this PDF specification.pdf article, and then it's found the right answer to my question, right? What font size should I use? It's actually highlighted 9 to 12 point font. That's a direct answer to the question I'm using, that I'm asking here. And it's able to do this because of very interesting deep learning question answering models that are understanding the utterance semantically, not just looking for keyword matches, but understanding the meaning of the sentence and then finding the right section of the right article and the right part of that sentence to help me answer my question. Let's take a look at variations. Now, if I might say something like, is there any specific font color that I should use, right? Slightly different question, still mentioning that it's the same section of the right article, and we're getting that section. But now, instead of pointing us to the font size, we're getting the font color, right? Black is the recommended font color, except that blue can be used for hypertext links. Now, if I wanted to take a look at the actual article, I can click on View More. And in this contextual window, you can actually get the right article with the right page pulled up so that I can kind of see more information and more context for the question that I've asked, which is very nice. I don't have to get directed to another page. Okay, let's ask for an abbreviation. So what if I say, what is DPI? And again, the system understands abbreviations, acronyms, things like that, being able to automatically now find the answer to that question. DPI, or dots per inch here, has now been described to me. I get the right answer and the right question from a different document, or from the same document, different section in the same document. Let's now take a look at disambiguation, where maybe there's multiple articles or multiple sections of the article that could potentially answer my question, and we want to guide the user to the right section. Let's say some of my pages are in landscape and some are in portrait mode. Do we need to standardize this before submission? And now the assistant's going to come back. Now it turns out my answer could be reliably in multiple different locations. And so it's asking me to narrow down the options. And we're doing this by looking at all of these different articles, figuring out where is the greatest variance, the difference between the articles, and then fixating on what makes those articles unique, the two groups. And in this case, one is about PDFs and the other is about rejection criteria. Okay, so I'm asking specifically about PDFs. I can ask that question and I can get the answer. Okay, save the page orientation, and it turns out that maybe landscape is the best. And again, if I wanted to, I can click on the View More button to get a better idea. Now let's take a look at an example of tabular inferencing, which is simply the idea that the content that I'm asking questions about is in a tabular format. It's in a table, and I want to be able to ask questions of that table. So let's say I'm submitting a document and I need to know how to label that document. How should I code the submission type when submitting a change in labeling text request? As you can tell, these are all very technical questions, something that a person who's submitting to the FDA might actually know what these sentences mean, and it might not make sense to the layperson, but that's really the goal here, right? That the domain specificity, the ability to get really technical documents and ask questions and get answers is really what we're exploring here. Okay, so now that I've gotten disambiguation, I can go ahead and click on, I'm looking for the US type of document, and here, now if I click on View More, the answer What type of coding should I provide? Well, for the submission type of change in labeling text, this is the type of coding. And there's the word that's highlighted here. I'm getting the exact cell in this table that answers my question. Now, if I wanted to, there's other related answers I can click on, and then I can also provide feedback, telling the system whether or not this is helpful or can it be improved, all of which gets fed back into the continuous learning module within the platform to help train this assistant further. All right, so hopefully that gave us an idea of some of the user experience elements. Now, let's try something where we switch gears and see how this works in a totally different channel. What you're seeing here is now the same assistant, or rather a different assistant deployed in a different channel, where we're now accessing the assistant from Microsoft Teams. Now, similarly, now I'm going to have different questions. I might ask something like, what kind of noise suppression does Teams offer for video calls? Now what I'm asking for are questions related to ITSM related documentation. Maybe it's related to Microsoft Teams. And here, again, regardless of the channel, the takeaway is that we can still provide a response, and a highlighted one at that, for the exact section of the right article that provides the answer to my question of what kind of noise suppression does Teams offer. Well, the Teams app decides on the best level of suppression. Now let's say I have another follow-up question. How good does my computer need to be if I want to get rid of all background noise? And you can notice that I can speak very conversationally, very naturally for sort of a human-sounding sentence, right? It doesn't have to be robotic or precise. I can say, how good does my computer need to be? And here, the assistant has understood that I'm looking for an understanding of how powerful does my computer need to be, right? And it's then telling me that your computer's processor must be, etc. type of processor in order to support all background suppression, right? And instead of saying suppression here, I said I want to get rid of, right? And the system has understood. Again, the way that we're able to do this is because of a semantic understanding of the sentence, and an understanding based on the meaning of the words here and not based on the specific keywords. And that's what allows us to use a question answering model to provide the right answer in this case. Let's now switch gears and take a look at a slightly different examples related to multilingual support for cognitive search. So I have an article here that's related to HR, and we're going to start making this content more conversational. What we're seeing here is a virtual assistant, and this is the back end of the Avaamo platform. This is the assistant Harold, and as you can see, there's different modules here, different use cases that are bundled together. In Avaamo's terminology, we call these skills. So let's jump into the simulator and start asking questions to this assistant. Okay, it's going to introduce itself. It knows who I am. There's some introductory things and some questions I can ask it. Okay, great. Let me come in and say something like, what is our PTO policy? So this is a question for which the answer is going to come from this document that we just took a look at. All right, what a fantastic question. We currently have an unlimited PTO policy. Great, and so we get the answer to the question that we're looking for. Now let's imagine that I am coming from a different country and I want to ask this question of the same document, but in a different language. Now I've asked the same question in French, and we'll see something interesting take place. We get the answer in French. Now what's happening here is the same article, it's in English. When we ask this question in a different language, we're going to get the answer in the language of our choosing, and the section is made available to us in French on the fly. Similarly, I can ask the same question in a logographically different language. So now I'm going to ask this question in Japanese, right? And this is saying, Anata no PTO policy wa nan desu ka, right? What is your PTO policy? And here we get the answer, right? And again, the right section is highlighted. I can click on Motto Miru, which is view more if I want to see more about the article. But the key takeaway here is organizations can provide documentation in one language. And now no matter what region people are asking these questions from, we can make that document available to them in the language of their choice in one go, right? And it's a very powerful way of making content accessible to more people across the world. Now, a follow-up question typically here is, what if the content is going to be from different regions? That's also configurable in the platform, and this is where we're going to start talking a little bit more about the tooling, where based on the roles and the permissions and entitlements of the user that's asking the questions, they'll get to see different articles. So if you're coming in from France, you might see a different HR-related article, whereas if I'm coming in from Canada or the United States, I might see a different article, right? And so all of this is configurable in the platform and allows us to make these documents conversational and available to people all over the world. Let's close out by looking at the back end of how content ingestion looks like once we've kind of ingested some of this content. Okay, so when we point the assistant to a source of documents, whether that's internal, external, those documents can be in any format. They can be in PDFs, they can be Word documents, PowerPoints, CSV files, Excel files, so on and so forth. What happens is Avaamo ingests that content, builds a knowledge graph, and then uses that knowledge graph and fine-tunes it over time as we add new articles. And this process takes a few seconds in the beginning, but once it's done, allows us to provide a very robust, out-of-the-box cognitive search experience. So here's an example of some articles that have been ingested. We've now understood that it's breaking things down into these chunks. We've extracted any entities that might be relevant. If there's any acronyms, we'll extract those, vocabulary terms, building a dictionary of items that are a part of this set of content, and then of course a knowledge graph as well that helps us understand, let me go and refresh this page, what are the relationships between different entities within the set of documents that we pulled together. How are they related to one another? Right? And this is actually the key to how the system is able to understand the meaning of sentences and build upon that as we add new articles and grow in accuracy and understanding of the content. All right, and there you have it. This was an overview of our cognitive search engine, which is one of the 3 runtime engines that enable Avaamo's IVAs to automate conversations for the enterprise. Hope you found that interesting, and please make sure to visit avaamo.ai or our YouTube channel for more information. Thank you very much.